Communication models refer to the conceptual frameworks or theories that explain the way of human communication. They also represent the entire process of communication between the sender and the receiver. The communication models try to answer the 5 W's and 1 H questions. For example, what is it? Who is involved in this process? When does it happen? Where does it take place? Why does it occur? And finally, how does it happen? Additionally, communication models explain the elements of communication process. For example, context, sender, receiver, encoding, decoding, channel, message, noise, and feedback. The first and probably the simplest model is the Aristotelian model. This was developed by Aristotle. In this model, the speaker plays a key role and is the only one active during the communication process, which is why it's also referred to as a speaker-centered model. It's the speaker's task to deliver a message to his passive audience. This makes it one way from the speaker to the receiver. Examples of this model are valedictory speeches, or think of a politician delivering a speech to the public. The Shannon-Weaver model is also known as the mother of all communication models. According to this model, communication has occurred when a message has been sent and received. Now, another key factor that you have to remember about this model is that this was the first to identify noise as a make or break factor in the communication process. Think of two people talking on the phone and a neighbor's dog barks angrily all of a sudden. The Lasswell Model. In this model, the focus was on the source and the channel through which information was sent. The 5 key elements of the Lasswell model are who, which pertains to the speaker or the sender. Says what? The message. In what channel? This pertains to the medium used. To whom? Which refers to the receiver or the audience. With what effect? What is the effect of the message to the receiver? In this model, while effect was taken into consideration, there was no concept of feedback. Hence, it is a linear model. A good example to illustrate this model is when we watch a news anchor giving us information about the coming typhoon. So, who? The news anchor. Says what? The information about the typhoon. In what channel? The television. To whom? The general public or the ones watching. With what effect? Warning and alerting them to evacuate potential risk areas. The Schramm Model. This model provides a straightforward approach to communicating, with the sender and the receiver both playing and trading the roles of encoder, interpreter, and decoder in a constant cyclical fashion. This allows both parties to contribute equally and share their feedback, which indicates that the message has been received and decoded. Classic example is when you're engaging in a conversation with your friend or significant other. The Berlo Model. This model, which is also called as the SMCR model, is the most basic form of communication we engage in today. Berlo identified 4 components to describe the communication process, which are the sender, the message, the channel, and the receiver. This model also takes into account the emotional aspect of the message. S, which stands for the source or the sender. How does he transfer information to the recipient? It's done with the help of communication skills, attitudes, knowledge, social system, and culture. The message is the package of information or meaning that is sent from the sender to the receiver. Content refers to the actual message from beginning to end. Elements are verbal and nonverbal aspects, such as gestures and signs that may influence the message. Treatment refers to the way in which the message is sent, the message packaging. Structure, as the word suggests, refers to the way in which it is arranged or composed. The code of the message is the form in which the message is sent. This may include text, language, video, gestures, music, etc. Next is the channel. The channel is the medium used to send the message. The medium must be able to be picked up by the sensory system of the receiver and may therefore include vision, sound, smell, taste, or touch. The receiver is the person who receives and subsequently decodes the coded message. In order to make communication as effective and smooth as possible, Berlo's SMCR model of communication assumes the receiver's thinking pattern must be in accordance with that of the sender. The White Model. This model looks at communication as a repetitive cycle. It suggests that there is no beginning nor end to communication. It also introduced the concept of feedback. According to Eugene White, in his definition of the model of communication, it is a repetitive cycle. His model is that of a cyclical process composed of 8 stages. These stages are thinking, symbolizing, expressing, transmitting, receiving, decoding, feedbacking, monitoring, and thinking. The dance model. This model emphasized the difficulty of communication. Frank dance uses the form of a helix, which gets bigger and bigger as it moves or grows. The main characteristic of a helical model of communication is that it is evolutionary. The communicators shared information only with a small portion of themselves to their relationships. It gradually develops into next level, but which will take some time to reach and expanding its boundaries to the next level. Later, the communicators commit more and share more portions by themselves. For example, when a child is born, the only means of communication for him is crying. He cries for everything, like hunger, pain, cold, etc. As the child grows, the means of communication become wider and broader. He learns to make noises. Then he learns a language to obtain attention and to fulfill his needs. As a helix, the process of communication, in this case, started as crying, and later it developed into a more complex and compound means. The Symbolic Interaction Model. This model reflects the nature of communication as a dynamic, systemic process in which communicators construct personal meanings through their symbolic interactions. A given interaction serves as a starting point for the next and future interactions. Think of how friends or lovers started out as total strangers who interacted at one point and eventually developed into something more meaningful. The Transactional Model. This model shows the exchange of messages between the sender and the receiver, where each takes turns to send or receive messages. Since both sender and receiver are necessary to keep the communication alive in Transactional Model, the communicators are also interdependent to each other. For example, transactional communication is not possible if the receiver is not listening to the sender. The transaction model is the most general model of communication. Everyday talk and interactions are also a form of transactional model communication. It is more efficient for communicators with similar environment and individual aspects. For instance, Communication between people who know each other is more efficient as they share the same social system.